Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today, Venus and Jupiter are conjoining in the sign of Cancer. This is arguably one of the most benefic-looking transits of 2025. We're going to talk a little bit more about what makes this transit so benefic. Is this really the best transit of 2025? Should we put that much hype on it? Why or why not? I think there is a lot about this transit that is pretty uplifting. And so we're going to talk about that. But there's also a real shadow to the combinations of Venus Jupiter that we're going to visit today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what ancient astrologers said about this combination and why you have to be a little bit careful of it as well. I've got some stuff from the I Ching. I did a random act of bibliomancy, and I have 5 things to watch for. So lots of good stuff to get into today. Before we do that, as always, remember to like and subscribe. It's my goal to see if we can get to 100,000 subscribers on the channel by next summer. I think it's totally manageable, but for people who watch regularly or not yet subscribed, it helps us a lot if you click the subscribe button, stay informed of everything we're up to, give us the like every day, give us a comment, all of that stuff, the interaction of the users helps us grow our work. So we really do appreciate it. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. I'm going to take you over there right now because Thursday night, my next webinar for the month is taking place. Go to the events page, click on live talks. You will see that I'm giving a talk on the 7th house, the house of marriage, love, and relationships. Also a house that is related to the Kama Sutra. Why? We're going to talk about the 7th house in relation to Kama, or desire, happiness, sensuality, pleasure, as a real backdrop of this house in ancient Vedic philosophy as well. This will give you some things to work with that I think should be pretty useful when it comes to looking at love and relationships in your chart, or if you have clients, this will hopefully help deepen that part of your practice. When you register, if you can't make the live webinar on Thursday evening, you get the replay afterward. The recording will be kept for you. So the other thing is, of course, this month we are starting to advertise and promote our first ever retreat in Mexico next June 6th through the 13th. There's a week-long training program I'm offering called The Oracle Within, a training in the theory and practice of divinatory astrology. We're going to be talking about how to communicate with oracles, how to establish the oracular space of an astrology practice, which is a major part of the not only theoretical, but philosophical and spiritual backdrop of ancient astrology. So we'll have a lot to look at. At the end of today's talk, there's an informational video that will take you through everything you need to know. Registration is now open. We do have limited spots available for this special training, and everything you need to know about the program will be explained in a little informational video at the end of today's recording. So on that note, let's take a look at the real-time clock. Here we go. So by means of the real-time clock, here we are, Tuesday, August 12th. Venus just separating from Jupiter already by 10 in the morning. So last night through early this morning, the 2 planets conjoined. We're going to give them a couple of days of separation, taking them all the way through Friday of this week, the 15th, before they're 3 to 4 degrees apart, which is typically when the most acute phase of the symbolism appearing in our lives takes place. We'll give that a few days. I think at the end of the week, with the moon also exalted in the sign of Taurus as the host of that conjunction, you may still be really feeling and noticing some of the symbolism, because that moon is very supportive of the Venus-Jupiter combination in general. So late this week, the moon in Taurus may also contribute to letting this linger a little longer than it might otherwise. So what I want to talk about today, given the combination of Venus and Jupiter in Cancer, is this question of what makes this transit so benefic. Why do astrologers say the best transit of 2025? Is it really the best transit of 2025? Well, there are some really good reasons to believe that it might be, and I'll explain what those are and why you can trust that this transit may bring some really nice things, truly. On the other hand, there's a very real shadow between any contacts of Venus and Jupiter that ancient astrologers talked about, that at the end of today's talk, after first getting you excited, I am going to rain on your parade, poop in your swimming pool, and tell you why this transit can actually be rather shadowy. No, I'm kidding. There is a shadow to watch for, and we're going to talk about that today. So we'll have fun and hopefully learn something new. All right, let's get into it. So first of all, Venus and Jupiter. Here's 5 things to watch for. I'm also going to, you guys who have been around my channel, once in a great while, I like to pull out The Archetypal Universe by Ren Butler. So after I go through my 5 things to watch for, I'm just going to read you a few little entries from his section on Venus Jupiter in his Archetypal Cookbook, which is fantastic. I also did some crazy shit today. I did bibliomancy. I randomly closed my eyes, meditated, prayed, picked one passage from the Old Testament randomly, just ripping through pages, just kind of ripping through. I didn't rip any pages of the Bible, just kind of leaping through pages. That's the word, and landing on a verse from the Old Testament. And then did the same thing in the New Testament. And to me, this is not because I am so committed to Christianity. It's just that this is a sacred text. I've done the same thing with the Tao Te Ching, and also today I cast the I Ching. So I have a hexagram that I cast asking the I Ching for some guidance or thoughts on what this might represent. A little bit of bibliomancy, 5 things to watch for, a little Ren Butler. We're cooking up, we're putting things in the crock pot here. So let's get into it. Here's the 5 things to watch for. We have the 2 benefics, 2 planets that, as I said at the start of the week, were connected with fertile conditions in nature. So things that support the growth of plants, trees, living creatures. It's a very fertile combination of planets. So one thing that they bring together when Venus and Jupiter get together, both planets were associated with helpful people. I'm going to talk about support more broadly, but I want to start here because Jupiter and trines in general, as well as Jupiter's joy in the 11th house, were all connected with allies. People who are like-minded, people who have similar goals or ambitions or dreams, people who have available resources, people who support us, people who like us. Jupiter. Venus, similarly, friendships, people who are enjoyable, people who are pleasant, people we have an easy time harmonizing with. In the music of life, Venus represents the people we can play our instruments with, so to speak. The soul is as an instrument. So when Venus and Jupiter come together, one thing that can happen is just social harmonization. The right people, the right times, the right places coming together with maybe a general way of describing it would be supportive. Supportive people, allies, friends, good vibes, good people. This is one of the most subjectively good parts about a Venus-Jupiter connection of any kind, although honestly the conjunctions, trines, and sextiles typically more supportive than, say, oppositions or squares. But even then, with the oppositions and squares, you can find that support is coming together somehow, maybe with a little bit more stress or tension with the squares and oppositions. This is a conjunction, which means there's really sort of a seeding point we could also see that is coming from this support. So you think of the kinds of supportive people or groups or allies or resources that come together to seed something or at the beginning of something or to provide a base or a starting point, because conjunctions between planets and their synodic cycles typically bring the start of a new cycle. So this Venus-Jupiter dynamic has that kind of feeling behind it. Now, let me just show you something. I want to take you back in time so that you can track a previous Venus-Jupiter dynamic. So what I'm going to do is eliminate everything from our perspective on the screen here except for Venus and Jupiter. And we're going to take it back in time. So this transit, because Jupiter takes about a year to go through signs, and then we get a Venus retrograde. Here was the benefic conjunction of Venus and Jupiter at the 29th degree of Taurus, which was May of 2024. So in late May of 2024, you may look back, look at the whole sign house of Taurus in your chart, and think about what kinds of people and support were coming into your life around that time. For me, for example, I had some new people coming on staff at Nightlight that are still here, that are still wonderful, supportive, awesome, good allies, and I would say good hosts and stewards of the Nightlight School who work for the school and help out with everything we do in the community. Venus-Jupiter will often bring very powerful, very positive people. The other thing that was happening for me around this time is I was really deepening my connection with my bodybuilding coach. So beneficial connections, a simple way to look at it, but any other kind of support, and you could go back and track this. You know, if you want to take it back one more, let's just take it back one more just for fun. Why not? We can. So why won't we? All right, here we go. So here's another one. This is Venus, Jupiter in Aries. It's a little bit different because Venus is in her detriment in Aries, a Mars ruled sign, but whatever. you can track this back to about March of 2023. There you go. There's another conjunction between the two benefics. So you could do this with your own software program and go back and track how they're appearing in the whole sign houses in your chart. And you may find that one of the themes that, not surprisingly, comes up over and over again is, oh, look at the supportive people. Look at the supportive resources that were flowing into my life somehow. Now, I mentioned people, but any form of support, psychic, emotional, material, financial, coaches, mentors, gurus, friends, companions, creative collaborations, anything that suggests a pooling together of supportive resources. Number 2 is well-being. When these two planets come together, there is often an aura of, let's talk about Jupiter as a planet that can represent a clear, coherent sense of meaning, purpose, and direction in our personal lives or in the cosmos as a whole. Jupiter is associated with wisdom traditions and, broadly speaking, with faith. That sense that life has a purpose, that we're on a path, that I can trust it, that there's a kind of inner spiritual and moral compass that is guiding me. And even if things are difficult, there's this recurring sense that it's difficult, but not without purpose or meaning behind it. So that sense of like, life is good, I trust inherently. I am maybe even understanding some things, or my understanding is growing or expanding. These are all Jupiterian qualities. And Venus tends to represent that part of life that, for the ancient Greeks, for example, could never be isolated from truth, which is beauty. But great, Jupiter gives us a sense of understanding, wisdom, purpose, direction, a sense of moral conviction, principled living, all of these good things, right? Venus says, and it can be enjoyable, and it's beautiful, and it tastes good, and it feels good, and there's connection that between souls, there's intimacy, there's sensuality. So life is, we can't divorce the aspect of pleasure, enjoyment, and an embodied sense of happiness and pleasantness to a life that is also faithful, true, good, just, etc. So when these two planets come together, not surprisingly, they're going to be just this overarching aura, let's call it, overarching aura, an aura of well-being. Things just feel good because you're marrying together the principles of a sense of direction, purpose, and wisdom with pleasure. So there's nothing bad. I mean, like, let me just put it this way. I recently, with this transit, have a few times mentioned the possibility that someone gets news of a pregnancy. It's just so Venus, Jupiter, and Cancer. I remember when we found out Ashley was pregnant with our first, and I just remember being like, this is destined. This is a big step. I have trust and faith that this is meant to be, that this is a good step. I'm so happy. There's so much joy, right? Like that excitement. Oh, I'm at the precipice of a big step in life. There's adventure coming. This is a seeding point, the opening of a new cycle, but you're on board for it and you feel good about what's to come. There's a sense of enthusiasm for the road ahead. A Venus-Jupiter conjunction in Cancer can get you feeling good about something that's new, or it can just promote a sense that this feels good and life is growing and expanding. And that leads to number 3, which is fertility, which I basically just mentioned. But this is a combination of planets in a water sign that were both associated with the growth of business, money, wealth, babies, plant life. I mean, anything that, I love that saying. I probably feel this way because my wife's an herbalist, but like what a woman waters grows. I don't know if you've heard that before. That's certainly the case for my Cancer rising wife. I feel like anything she gives her devoted attention to, we have lizards. We're about to adopt a rabbit. We've got 2 dogs. We've got 2 girls. I mean, and honestly, like, even those parts of me that have been fostered and developed, in some ways that never could have been without the way that my wife has supported me. And so Venus, and it doesn't have to be a literal woman, right? It doesn't have to be a literal mom. Certainly I would describe my wife that way, with the kind of traditional gender normative, like what a woman waters grows, but it's really just what that tender, loving, feminine, caring, devoted part of us gives time and attention to will grow. That's really all that it means. And I just think that this is not only a fertile energy, but it's like there's a great mother in the sky ready to water things and make them grow. And I think that's a really beautiful way of thinking about this. And it is one of the reasons why this may be one of the more uplifting transits of the year. Number 4 is good luck. I want to read you something about the etymology of luck, which in the Greek, coming from the Latin, I believe it's fortuna, but in Greek was tuke, right? I believe that's how you pronounce it, tuke, but sometimes it looks like tyche. It's like Tyche in English, but I believe it's pronounced tuke. Anyway, this was a goddess of fortune. Not surprisingly, the moon was the planet that was called Fortune. And this goddess of fortune was one of the Moira, I believe that's how you say that, Moirai, which are the fates. And Tyche was, Tuke, I should say, had the attribute of holding a rudder, like on a boat, and was thought to be sort of guiding the ship of life. I won't say more about that because it can be a very sort of dense philosophical topic to unpack Tuke and all of the meanings of Tuke. But this, like a moon-ruled sign of Cancer, Tuke is a goddess of fortune, of fate, of destiny, of the directing of things, like the rudder of life guiding us along. Remember that this is Jupiter's exaltation. Exaltation as a dignity category is actually rooted in the moon philosophically. There's a whole reason for that I can't unpack now, something we talk a lot about in my programs. Come study with us. But the exalted status of Jupiter in Cancer is associated with things through that whole sign house of Cancer, through the transit of Jupiter, according to natal context, typically brings good luck. What is good luck? Good fortune. It means that the rudder of fate is steering us through things that we, in consensus human reality, on a subjective relative plane, have to qualify all of that, typically describe as good. Oh, this turn of events was pleasant. This turn of events was supportive. This turn of events led me to a deeper sense of wisdom or understanding, or this turn of events makes me feel good. So good fortune is broadly described as things that happen that we didn't necessarily see coming, or that turn out favorably, that we go, oh, wow, good fortune, good luck. There's a destiny behind those kinds of events that Jupiter was associated with, and not surprisingly, Venus was as well. She rejoiced in the 5th house, which is called the house of good fortune. Jupiter rejoiced in the house that was called the house of good spirit. There's slight differences between the two philosophically, but the point is when the two planets come together, while Jupiter's exalted in the sign of the moon that was called the goddess of fortune, we will often see just good luck. Things that have a way of appearing or manifesting that we didn't see coming, that we go, oh, well, thank you, universe, that was nice. I don't like telling people you're going to win the cosmic lottery. I don't like telling people you can count on good luck. Not everyone's going to suddenly receive a check in the mail or something like that, but this is a transit whose appearance, especially when it's configured to things in your birth chart through aspect or through angularity, will often just bring that surprising turn of circumstance, or what we call fate or fortune, that we go, wow, that was nice. That's it. It's that simple. All right. Well, we've gotten through all of the reasons why many astrologers are saying, is this the best transit of 2025? I'll leave it up to all of you to decide if it actually is or not. But what I want to end with is the shadow. And the shadow might broadly be called indulgence. Let me try to describe why this is an issue. So, first and foremost, remember that for the ancient mystics coming from that sort of Hellenistic worldview, truth, beauty, justice, they're inseparable from one another. Let me give you a simple example. Music is both beautiful and sort of logical. There's an intelligence, mathematical ratios, principles of harmonization, notes on musical scales, musical theory. It's like math. There's a logos in music. At the exact same time, music is aesthetic. We hear it, we see it, If you're high, you taste it. You get what I'm saying? You can tell I just went and saw some Grateful Dead shows. Anyway, if you are experiencing music as an experiential reality, we call it beautiful. And when you're able to see the intelligence of music, and some of us care less about this than others, I get that. Trust me. I don't want you to be in your head while listening to music necessarily. But as someone who plays music and has studied different modes and scales and stuff like that, I can't help but notice that it's both beautiful and true. There's a kind of almost like a logos, a scientific, rational quality, while at the same time it's inseparable from its sensual quality. Now, this reflects something of the combination of Jupiter and Venus. Jupiter, as we've talked about on this channel all summer, especially given the Jupiter-Saturn square that we experienced back in June, we said is associated with that broad sense that life has purpose, meaning, logical, rational, coherence, that it's understandable, that it's moral, that it's good, that it's true, and that you can understand something of it. Maybe you can't circumscribe reality with your head, but that as we go along, if we seek to understand, the universe has a way of speaking to us so that we're illuminated from within. And that, broadly speaking, is something associated both with Jupiter and the Sun as planets of wisdom. And so Jupiter represents that sense, that overarching sense of the meaning and purpose and comprehensibility of life. It can be comprehended. Venus tells us that life can be enjoyed. Life can be beautiful, aesthetically pleasing. It's an embodied, living, relational matrix where we get to taste and see and touch, right? That's important too, because you can't separate those things. Otherwise, you would just have this like abstract vacuum of triangles. Right? You'd have no way to appreciate them through living, vibratory, connected experiences between beings. So, however, when those two things come together, you can see how it's like, oh, wow, good luck, fertility, well-being, a feeling of support, the wind's at your back. It's both comprehensible and enjoyable. And so look at all that nice stuff. On the other hand, there is a way in which these two planets can undermine one another and represent a polarization on an archetypal level that has long presented itself in the history of religion, philosophy, politics, and that's this. If it's all enjoyment and no moral compass, you get something like hedonism. If it's all enjoyment and no moral compass, you might get something like materialism, consumerism. You might get something like the epidemic of food addiction to foods that have tons of processed chemicals in them that are addictive because the people making them don't care. They just care about the money, stuff like that. This is something I've been thinking and reading about all summer, so I apologize for my little soapbox there, but you get the idea. If it's all Venus, it's all pleasure, it's all rooted in the most immediate form of gratification, then that can happen at the cost of Jupiter. Jupiter can go right out the window. We have no faith. We have no overarching sense of living in a moral cosmos with a built-in telos, a reason for being here that's larger than just pleasure, but that isn't also exclusive. Is it mutually exclusive? It's pleasure's a part of it. That's ideal, right? On the other hand, you can have faith that is so moral, that's so puritanical, that's so doctrinaire that it becomes repressive toward the body. So, for example, the kind of, you think about all of the, Victorian era movies where it's like there's always a woman who just is being forced to be so prude and uptight and proper, and she just needs to let her hair down and just go. You know what I'm saying? Venus Jupiter can be like a combination where morality says no to the body. This world is fallen. Indulgence is evil. Pleasure is suspect always. So you can feel how these two planets can potentially polarize. When they come together, the seeding of their tension is also present. And sometimes when they come together, we can do things like develop a philosophy of indulgence. We can somehow say yes to more indulgent parts of ourselves that become problematic. There can be a sense of gluttony or overdoing things or spending too much. because the pleasure principle is taking over. On the other hand, there may be let's call them like fanatical ideas about how we ought to be. Like in the sign of Cancer, you could see someone, I don't think this is going to happen for a lot of people watching this channel, right? But you could see this happening. Someone says that a woman should be having these roles and these specific duties, and she shouldn't be doing these things. That's a potential manifestation of Jupiter, Venus, and Cancer. Some kind of doctrinaire puritanical philosophy about what a woman or a mother should be that represses something of Venus, of her independence, or of her pleasure body. So these are the tensions that we have to watch for between the two planets. Now, there's some really interesting things. I'm going to read you some of the shadow qualities from Ren Butler's archetypal universe. These are the shadow qualities of Venus-Jupiter combinations: a love of shopping, luxury and extravagance, rich living, overindulgence, decadent materialism, conspicuous consumption. I always say shopping is cheaper than a psychiatrist, says Tammy Faye Baker, who was born with Venus trine Jupiter. An inordinate pursuit of status and prestige, social ambition, desire to have friends in high places, alliances for material gain, social gatherings with a theme of career advancement, the beauty culture, the beautiful people, the fashion scene, qualities of vanity and conceit, an inflated sense of one's attractiveness, a need to feel more cultured than other people, social and aesthetic pretensions, snobby feelings, courtly mannerisms, an overly saccharine persona, cloying sweetness and friendliness, a habit of overdoing sentiment, inflated affections, false happiness, a desire for everything to be nice and reluctance to face the more gritty or sordid side of life, phoniness and hypocrisy, the potential to be spoiled by privilege, habitual laziness, excessive love of ease, craving for sweets as a substitute for love and intimacy. Oh, okay. You get it. That's it. And that's the shadow. So watch for it. Now, I'm going to read you a couple of other things. This is kind of going down some different pathways. So indulge me for a moment. All right. So I did some bibliomancy. Bibliomancy, for those of you who don't know, I've been doing since I was a kid. I was a preacher's kid getting into divination early by just flipping the Bible open to random pages. It's really my first experience of divination in some ways. So I meditated, prayed, said, please provide me some insight for today's content on the Venus-Jupiter conjunction and something that I can use for conveying something of the meaning. So the first one I opened to in the Old Testament after a moment of meditation was Psalm 50. And this particular set of lines I landed my finger on. This is God talking in the Psalm to people who've been offering sacrifices. I have no need of a bull from your stall or of goats from your pens, for every animal of the forest is mine, and the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird in the mountains, and the creature of the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world is mine and all that is in it. Beautiful. I want to talk so after I read that, I started thinking about it. Wow, that's a beautiful. I immediately felt like that radical moment of divination where the oracle has spoken. Okay, wow, beautiful. Now, what's there? Like, you sit with it a little bit. So here's a portion that's talking about a kind of piety that doesn't start from the right place, like an offering or a sacrifice. And I think about my altar practice, it's right over there. And I think about when we offer something up. There's a long history of making offerings in a spirit of reciprocity, right? So, for example, I offer up a sacrifice, and in so showing that meaningful gesture, the rains come, they fertilize the crops. Psychically, there's all across our planet, there's a long history of this compensatory, cyclical, reciprocal dynamic. I give, I offer, I sacrifice my heart, my soul, my sweat, my labor, a cow or a goat, whatever it has been. And then because of that act of generosity, something responds in kind and gives. The starting point of that relationship is humility, respect, love, devotion, sincerity, integrity. If that exchange becomes rooted in, let me scratch your back, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. I'll give you something, you give me something. Then we're, according to this verse, and I love this verse as just a broad universal teaching, set aside the biblical context. It's like if we forget that the universe doesn't need anything, right? And if we forget that on some level, neither do we, are we really in a state of lack? I mean, it's kind of radical because, yes, of course, we need food, we need shelter, we need to pay bills. There's a lot of needs that we have. But most spiritual traditions encourage us to deepen our contact with the soul so that we have a well to draw from within, so that we can say whatever comes and goes on that level of things, and that is a level of things we have to care about, but whatever comes and goes on that level of things, it's well with my soul because there is a well within that I can draw from. And that's my source. That's my real well-being. If we're giving from that space without expectation of return, paradoxically, the rains come. But if we're sort of operating from the level of our needs, our anxiety, our fixations, our attachments, even though that level of needs is real, I'm not saying it's not, but if we're operating at that level as opposed to offering something from within, then we're operating within a transactional dynamic, and we've forgotten who we're talking to. We've forgotten ourselves, and we've forgotten who we're actually talking to. What I love about Venus Jupiter in this sign of Cancer is that it suggests that there is a gardener in the sky that wants to water your life. It makes sure that you enter into a reciprocal exchange with that great nurturing force of reality, that beautiful, fertile rain from heaven. Enter into that relationship from your heart with curiosity, humility, respect, integrity, not need, attachment, fear, anxiety, desire, power hunger. It's so subtle and it's so easy to fall into. I'm not someone who has it figured out, but I know it's something I have to consider and come back to. And we have to check ourselves on it regularly, because even checking ourselves on it regularly is that gesture of humility itself. Am I okay? Like, just leave the ego at the door. I'm giving something. I'm offering something without expectation because I love you. Thank you for my life. Thank you for this well. It's already within me. I'm already fulfilled. And the universe knows. You can petition, but the universe already knows what you need, what you're lacking, what you're scared about, what you're anxious about, what you're attached to. It doesn't condescend and say, ha, how foolish and attached and silly you are to have these worldly things. No, but when we offer something without attachment and without that fear, the universe says, I've got you. That's a real reciprocal dynamic. And it's something that is at the heart of how we also connect with oracles, and how oracles give us real responses, because we ask sincerely without attachment, knowing that our fears are seen and loved and validated, right? So I wanted to use that. I think that verse is beautiful, and it has a really fun, interesting way of connecting to the transit. All right, here's the other one I pulled from the New Testament, from Acts chapter 19. It's really interesting that I pulled this because it's talking about the Apostle Paul in the city of Ephesus, which I think is in modern day Turkey now. I went to Ephesus when I was a teenager. I went on a tour, like a tour of the Apostle Paul's footsteps through the Mediterranean with my dad, who was leading it through our church. And I remember Ephesus a lot because it was one of the most beautiful, ruinous like cities that we visited. And this is actually one of my favorite parts of the New Testament, this specific part of the story of the book of Acts, I've had a lot of personal connection to this story. And so I'm going to try to explain some of that context, because I think if you read this just purely within an evangelical, like modern Christian New Testament context, you're going to miss something here. So I say that in advance also because I know some people might be triggered by hearing something from the New Testament, especially if you came out of anything that was damaging on a religious level. So just try to hear this as an interesting story, and let's see what we can extract. So when Paul is in Ephesus, it's really interesting. So there's a kind of like a riot that happens. He's teaching basically that there's just one God, and that the way I like to think about it is that he's sort of saying, like, the way that I interpret a lot of what he's saying is that there's one universal thing behind all of the many appearances. I think you could criticize much of evangelical Christianity as eliminating the diversity of divinity to its own detriment. So that is a criticism that is one of the reasons that I found myself interested in so many different world faiths and had to sort of walk away from Christianity, because I'm not opposed to monotheism, but I'm opposed to monotheism that doesn't have an appreciation for polytheism at the exact same time, right? Anyway, I digress. Okay, so about that time there arose a great disturbance about the way. A silversmith named Demetrius, who made silver shrines of Artemis, brought in no little business for the craftsmen. He called them together along with the workmen in related trades and said, "Men, you know we receive a good income from this business, and you see and hear how this fellow Paul has convinced and led astray large numbers of people here in Ephesus, and in practicality the whole province of Asia. He says that man-made gods are no gods at all. There is danger not only that our trade will lose its good name, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis will be discredited, and the goddess herself, who is worshipped throughout the province of Asia and the world, will be robbed of her divine majesty." When they heard this, they were furious and began shouting, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." Soon the whole city was in an uproar. The people seized Gaius and Aristarchus, Paul's traveling companions from Macedonia, and rushed as one man into the theater. Paul wanted to appear before the crowd to talk to them, but the disciples would not let him. Even some of the officials of the province, friends of Paul, sent him a message begging him not to venture into the theater. The assembly was in confusion. Some were shouting one thing, some another. Most of the people did not even know why they were there. The Jews pushed Alexander to the front, and some of the crowd shouted instructions to him. He motioned for silence in order to make a defense before the people. But when they realized he was a Jew, they all shouted in unison for about 2 hours, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." Anyway, that's the gist of the story. But what I find interesting about that, first of all, is from a divinatory perspective, just opening this verse to a Venus-Jupiter conjunction in the sign of the moon, pretty profound for a few reasons. One, silver is the metal of the moon. Artemis is a great goddess of the moon. So a Venus-Jupiter conjunction in the sign of Cancer, and I just happened to open to a portion of the New Testament where devotees of the moon goddess are protesting an imperializing monotheist. I just love that. I just love that, because here's what I want to say, taking this in a direction that's not specifically within Paul's agenda, maybe, right? But seeing it more broadly. Paul left that city, right? He took off. Is it possible that he enraged the goddess? Is it possible that he offended the goddess? Sure, I think so. The moon is associated with masses of people, with confusion, even with mob mentality. But the moon is also connected with, through a goddess like Artemis, with all of the most foundational elements of life, fertility, the hunt, food, mothers. Like Artemis covers a lot of moon bases. And Paul coming in and saying that your gods are all bogus seems to have specifically triggered the anger of the moon goddess. I could see the people acting out as devotees of the moon goddess in this way. That's pretty profound. So let me just spin it this way. One thing that Venus and Jupiter might be doing is highlighting the importance of the feminine, the goddess, as leader, as the one whose voice matters right now, as one not to be trifled with, even though she looks like a big mother in the sky. It's like, don't test the mother, listen, respect to the mother, to that goddess, to that presence. And the potential disrespect shown toward the feminine, toward the goddess, might be, you can see that the shadow of Venus and Jupiter will drive you right out of our city if you disrespect the moon goddess. Isn't that beautiful? It's interesting. It speaks to also maybe some of the shadows, just taking it in a different direction, of what cults, clans, cliques, groups that are unconsciously bound together by different kinds of ritual or cultural ties that can resist outsiders, can push them out or even drive them out or try to harm them. So you see how all of those, you can read a lot from that story. It's really beautiful. Now, the other thing I will say in defense of Paul, because I think you can turn this the other way, we should, if we're being good archetypalists, we should always keep turning the jewel. The other way of looking at this is that, and I ran into this in India. So I went and visited Sri Ramakrishna's temple in Calcutta. And if you know Sri Ramakrishna, wow, what an incredible spiritual teacher. The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, one of my favorite books of all time. In that book, and or maybe I heard this as a story at the temple. I can't remember where, I think I read it. But anyway, he talked about people selling paraphernalia outside of and around the temple where the deities were, where people go to worship. And there was this way that was so careful and so thoughtful that he had, like, walking a line of saying, it's good. It's good that people can buy statues, buy incense, take them home to their house. It's like a museum gift shop. If you go to the zoo, there's like a little petting, it's like not the petting zoo, the gift shop where you can buy little stuffed animals of all the animals you just visited. It's a racket. Don't let your kids go into those places. Go. Go right by. So anyway, I'm teasing, but Sri Ramakrishna had said something like that, like these people who are selling things, it's kind of a racket. They're taking advantage of the religious and spiritual sentiments, and they're trying to covertly sneak materialism into the temple. These people make their living through the temple. They're taking advantage of the temple, and some of them aren't even really that pious or religious. This is happening in this portion of the text as well. A silversmith and a group of, craftsmen who build the Artemis statues that are sold outside and around the temple of Artemis are pissed off because people are starting to say, oh, maybe I can worship God without a little statue that I go and buy. Or maybe I can worship God and this God has all of the faces of all of the gods and goddesses. And, maybe I don't need this particular goddess and this particular ritual for this particular thing to happen. Right before this happens, in the book, in chapter 19 of the book of Acts, people come forth in the city of Ephesus to burn incantation scrolls that guarantee that if you do this set of rituals, you'll get this outcome. There's that sense of reciprocity rooted in transaction. So there's something surrounding the temple of Artemis in this passage that is also about transactional materialism that's taking advantage of religion and spirituality. Now, again, Sri Ramakrishna, very carefully in my memory of this passage, which has been a while since I've read it, but he also said, like, these people have a right to earn a living. It's not wrong to earn a living in service to the temple. It's not wrong to earn a living creating statues of gods and goddesses. I remember growing up in the church, the confusion I had because a lot of people treated my father as though he were not worthy of having a raise. You shouldn't make money if you're doing God's work because money and God's work are oppositional forces. There's Jupiter and Venus again. So on the one hand, something in the story is sort of condemning the materialization of the temple through these building of silver statues. And they're rioting because their money is being threatened. But on the other hand, they have a right to be upset. They earn money through this. And I'm sure some of them were more materialistic than others. I'm sure some of them were building, I'm just making this up in my head, guys. I'm just imagining. I'm sure some of them were people who were sincere devotees of Artemis who also built statues and sold them and made their living. The two things are not mutually exclusive. Materialism and spirituality are not enemies. They can be, though. And this story highlights that tension. Take it out of context. Again, I'm not on the same evangelical trip that the Apostle Paul was, right? But that story can be read in a variety of ways that become very interesting. I hope that I've been able to touch on some of them and just, stir the pot and get you thinking about it, because I think it's really fascinating. Now, the next thing that I want to do is close with the I Ching hexagram 5. This is the hexagram that I cast that gave us some really nice insight. So I got to pull up the interpretation that I really liked on my phone. So hexagram 5 of the I Ching is called waiting. Sometimes it's called calculated waiting. And I want to read you this text. The judgment reads this: if you are sincere, you will receive light and success. To be correct brings good fortune. It furthers to cross the great river. So here is a beautiful hexagram that couldn't be more appropriate for the bestowal of benedictions that surrounds a transit like this, that we start thinking about or that we become expectant of, and that's problematic. If you are sincere, you have light and success. You see how sincerity is tied to success. Not desire, not impatience, not a formula that you follow, a transaction that occurs. To be firmly correct brings good fortune. Good fortune, that would be that sudden turn of events that is very supportive. We go, wow, that was great, thank you. How does that come about? Through being firm and correct. Now, for the I Ching, that means being devout, being sincere, coming from the heart with non-attachment, with sincerity, with humility, with curiosity, all of those great qualities that we all seek to embody. We do embody them when we're at our best, right? It furthers to cross the great river, which means that things have a way of coming when we're sincere that support us and that allow us to make great passages in our life, to do great things, to accomplish great tasks. So here's the translation from the author that I really appreciate. This, by the way, is the I Ching, the Oracle of, where is it? I Ching, the Oracle of the Cosmic Way. That's the title of the text I'm reading from. Waiting is defined by the sage as having two main meanings that are directly connected with each other. One refers to humans waiting for something, nourishment, help, fulfillment of their lives. The other refers to the helpers that would come to their aid if the person waiting for aid would make it possible for that to happen. It is made possible through correct and modest attitudes in the way that we seek help. The principal purpose of this hexagram is to inform us of the way the cosmic helpers that are primarily assigned to humans engage in their helping activities. Receiving this hexagram often tells a person that either through their attitude or their actions, they have made it difficult or impossible for these helpers to assist them in their life. They are therefore standing by, watching and waiting expectantly. When's my good stuff going to come? This hexagram will often have a way of coming up. This is me talking now, not the book. When it's saying, hey, if you're still waiting for something, if you're waiting for that support, that blessing, that benediction, that good fortune, maybe check your sincerity, your humility, your approach. Maybe realign yourself within. Let go of attachments or expectant attitudes. So anyway, this text goes on to talk at length about how to wait for the favor or blessings or good fortune of heaven. And that's a heaven and earth kind of an I Ching way of looking at things. But the waiting for the prosperity, the providence, the good luck, the good fortune primarily has to do with non-expectant, non-attached, humble, sincere waiting that's also rooted in an appropriate offering. So I use all of these examples now to add something in that's really a little bit more on the shadow side of the transit. When astrologers blindly, in the masses, say this is the best transit of the year, I don't know. Is it? I mean, there's lots of things to like about this transit, which we outlined, but you can feel the whole shadow on the backside of today's talk, right? You can feel the shadow around this and how important it becomes to recognize when celestial omens appear in the sky, that they are manifestations of the divine that always ask of us for a level of engagement that, if it comes from the heart, is a completely different experience than one that looks at it like just like a Pez dispenser of things happening. So, food for thought. Venus Jupiter food for thought. I was thinking about what we could do for Venus Jupiter this week. And one of the things we decided to do is a viewer, one of you out there who's also a student in the program, has a place in South America that makes cacao. And they sent us some ceremonial grade cacao, which I'd never had before, and some instructions for making it. So I think we're going to have some cacao with Venus Jupiter and maybe offer some up to the goddess, to Artemis, and all the silversmiths of the world doing their best. All right, that's it for today. I hope you're having a good one. Stick around after I sign off. Right after I sign off, there's an informational video about our retreat next June in Mexico. We're going to be talking about the Oracle, how to connect with it all week in a beautiful setting. I can't wait to see some of you there. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm really excited to tell you more about the Oracle Within, the retreat that we'll be hosting in Mexico in June of 2026. So this is a little informational video that I've made to answer all the questions that you might have about the retreat. In this video, I'm going to start by telling you more about what you will learn on the retreat, what the focus of our studies will be, and then I'm going to tell you about our daily format and sort of what day-to-day life will look like at this retreat center outside of the actual material we'll be studying. I'm going to then tell you who this retreat is ideal for, what kind of background you may want to have before coming along. And then finally, I'm going to tell you more about how you can register. And of course, I'll take you over to the actual retreat website page so that you know where all of the information is located. There's also a really rich FAQ section that will probably answer any further questions you may have. On that note, let's start with what will I learn? So for a very long time, astrologers have talked about what astrology is. What is this? Is it some kind of karmic science? Is it a science of causal energies and influences? Is this actually scientific? Like, what order of knowing is astrology? If we say we can know something about reality, then how can we actually say that when it comes to astrology? These may seem like really deep, dense philosophical issues, but actually they're at the heart of what it means to really deepen into astrology. To have an understanding of what this actually is so fundamental and so helpful. Throughout all of the programs that I teach at Nightlight, I, of course, talk at length about my belief that astrology is a form of divination, that this is a language of signs and omens, very much like the tarot or the I Ching or many other systems of symbolic divination from all around the planet. We're going to spend a lot of time on this retreat talking about what astrology is. From a historical and philosophical perspective, what is divination? What is divination, not just in this tradition, but all over the planet? What kind of things does a divinatory view of the cosmos assume about the nature of reality, about the nature of the soul, and what we're actually doing as practitioners when we practice astrology or when we study it or when we use it for ourselves? So one of the teachers that I had that made a huge impact on me, and 12 years ago when Jupiter was last in Cancer, I hosted him for a retreat on astrology as a form of divination, is Jeffrey Cornelius. He wrote this book called The Moment of Astrology, Origins in Divination, which is, in my opinion, one of the best books on astrology ever written. This will be something like a preparatory textbook that a lot of students on the retreat I'll recommend read before you come to this course. Over the program for the course of a full week, in the mornings, we're going to be talking about the history, the metaphysics, the philosophy, the ancient mystics, and what they said about the nature of astrology itself. So we're going to think really deeply about what is astrology. Then in the afternoons, we're going to talk about how to connect with an oracle. Connecting with an oracle, connecting with astrology as a divinatory system, in other words, is about the marriage of intuition and being able to listen to the oracle speak while also utilizing the logic of craft. How do you marry those two things together? It's not something we take a lot of deliberate time to talk about as astrologers. So in the mornings, we're talking about history, philosophy, theory of astrology. In the afternoons, we're going to be talking about how to actually develop a living, vibrant relationship with an oracle so that it's informing how you approach the craft of a reading or how you approach the craft of astrology itself, if it's something that you maybe just use only for you in your own spiritual path. Either way, practitioners, hobby students are all welcome. So a lot of hands-on immersive work with charts, with live clients, with different systems of divination, and talking a lot about how to connect with an oracle experientially in our afternoons, where our mornings will be devoted to theory. It's about 30 to 40 hours worth of content that we'll be doing over the course of a week together, which means this is effectively like one of my advanced training programs condensed into a week. It's brand new material, brand new curriculum, doesn't appear anywhere else in the Nightlight programs. And yet, everything that this program includes is really a condensation of the underlying philosophy of astrology itself that is a part of all of the Nightlight programs and all of my work as a whole. And again, most of that was deeply inspired by the work of Jeffrey Cornelius, who's I consider him something of a mentor in my life. So that's a bit about what you will learn. If you have questions about what you will learn, you can feel free to email me for more details, info@nightlightastrology.com. Now, I want to talk about the format of the retreat. When you're on this retreat, first of all, you're in a beautiful sort of jungle beach location near Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, for a week, which means we every day will not just be about theory and experiential, immersive, oracular work, which I'm very excited about. I have a ton of really good curriculum written for us as a group to go through. But in the mornings, we're going to have the option of starting your morning with breath work, yoga, meditation. In the evenings, we'll probably cap our days off with a little bit of centering as well. So my wife, Ashley, who I ran a yoga studio with for a decade, will be with me leading daily meditation and yoga. She is an incredibly good yoga teacher, very grounded and very, wherever your level is at, there'll be something there for you. And that's optional as well. So every day you have a little meditation and yoga. There's healthy food that serves people if you're vegan, vegetarian, or eat meat or whatever. There's options for food. There's a beach, there's a pool, there's some jungle hikes available. So our days will be broken into periods of free time, periods of rest, and periods of focused learning with things like meditation and yoga as options that are there for everyone. We'll also have some other meaningful group exercises that we'll do that will be, again, about how do you connect with an oracle? How do you make a conversation with the oracle a daily part of your life? So that's something of the format that you can look forward to in this beautiful kind of oceanside retreat setting. More information on the website. I'll show you that in a second. Who is this for? Ideally, you are someone who has a background in traditional Hellenistic astrology already. Wherever that comes from, if it's my courses or not, I want people coming to this retreat to have some pretty good solid background in Hellenistic astrology already. Or if you're from within our programs, then as long as you are enrolled in the year one program, you don't have to have finished it. You just need to be at least enrolled in it. Then you would be more than welcome. Any alumni from any of our programs would be welcome. And again, people who have some serious background in traditional astrology already, just because I don't want people to come along with maybe a modern background, but zero understanding of Hellenistic. So that would be who I would recommend this for. Spaces are limited and we anticipate the retreat will fill up rather quickly. So I really recommend registering as soon as you can. You also have the early bird rates to help you save. Finally, how do I register? I'm going to take you over to the website and you will find that here, the website, you can find it under the events page. Go to Immersive Retreat, or under the courses, it's our new course called The Oracle Within. When you scroll down, you're going to see everything that the program includes, basically everything I've gone over, maybe a little bit more details and depth there, as well as a little personal note for me that I wrote about why this means so much to me. You'll learn more about Marta Jade, which is the beautiful retreat center. You can check it out. You're going to book through us. So you don't book through the retreat center, you book through us, and then we take care of it. At the bottom, you're going to find registration options that will be available starting on August 11th. That's today. Right now, as I'm looking at this, we don't have the prices listed yet. It's still kind of under construction. But at the bottom, you'll find different available options for registering. The different options will include different room options, and there's different. So if you want a private room versus maybe sharing a room with someone we'll assign you with that's part of the group, or maybe even a small group dorm room where there's like 5 people are sharing a room and you're comfortable being with other students on the trip, stuff like that. So there'll be some options there for everyone. There's an early bird rate that'll be in effect until October, saves you a little bit of money off the cost. And then also all of the different room options that are available at different price tiers depending on and they go first come first serve in terms of like, so there's some ocean view rooms. The people who book first will get the best. We just go best available first and just run it like that. So anyway, again, as you are looking over anything on the page, you have any questions, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. I hope that this has been helpful. I can't wait to have finally an immersive in-person training program in a beautiful location. It's nice to do things online, but I really love having in-person time available. And I know that you're going to also really enjoy working with Ashley during the evenings throughout the week. Ashley will also have some little workshops that she'll be offering as options for people that are part of your retreat package that will be on plant spirit medicine topics and how to use different plant teachers to work with different astrological signatures in the chart. You got a difficult Mars, work with this plant. You got a challenged Venus, try this plant. So there's going to be some really fun little add-ons around plant spirit medicine that Ashley, if you know her on my channel, she talks about plants often, will also lead. So anyway, that's it. That's your informational video. I hope that this was useful. Hope to see some of you on the retreat in Mexico next year. Take it easy, everyone.